Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified. Here we take up important news articles and discuss them in detail as per the demands of UPSC examination. Topics for today's discussion are displayed on your screen. Let's begin the discussion. The first article of today's discussion is based on the news which appeared on text and context page of the Hindu. The news is related to the legal row between farmers and the PepsiCo company. It is relevant as it becomes part of General Studies Paper 3, Science and Technology portion, Intellectual Property Rights. Let us discuss what the news is. Earlier, the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Authority revoked the company's registration vis-a-vis the unique potato variety developed by it. PepsiCo filed an appeal against the order of Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Authority in the Delhi High Court. However, the court held that there was no merit in appeal filed by PepsiCo over the patent rights for its unique potato variety. The topic is relevant as in 2014 mains question appeared. The question is, in a globalized world, intellectual property rights assume significance and are a source of litigation. Broadly distinguished between the terms copyrights, patents and trade secrets. Now, let us discuss what is Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Authority Act. The Act provides an effective framework to conserve and encourage the development of various plant varieties. It established an effective system to safeguard and recognize the rights of breeders, researchers, and farmers to promote agricultural development in the country. The Act has also introduced intellectual property protection in Indian agriculture, and it is the world's only IPR legislation which grants intellectual property rights not only to plant breeders but also to farmers. The coming of the Act has facilitated the mushrooming of Indian seed industry to ensure the availability of high quality seeds and planting materials to farmers. Under the Act, there is an eligibility criteria for the variety of seed to be registered. A seed is eligible for registration if it fulfills the criteria for distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability. The Act has also prescribed the registrable plant varieties that can be registered for protection. These are new variety, extant variety, farmer's variety, and essentially derived variety. Now, let us know what are the institutional mechanisms under the Act. Under the Act, the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Authority have been created to implement the provisions of the Act by Department of Agriculture and Cooperation. Some of the general functions of the authority include developing the distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability test guidelines for the new plant species. It will also facilitate development and commercialization of new varieties through formal linkages with agricultural universities, research institutions, and Krishi Vigyan Kendras. The Act also provides for recognizing and rewarding farmers, the community of farmers, particularly the tribal and rural community engaged in conservation and improvement of seeds. The Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Authority also is to maintain the National Gene Bank to store the seed material. It has also been mandated to preserve the plant genetic resources of economic plants and their wild relatives. The Act has also provided for the establishment of Plant Varieties Protection Appellate Tribunal. The decisions of the tribunal can be challenged in High Court, and the tribunal has to dispose of the appeal within 1 year. Now let us move on to discuss the case which has been appearing in the news. PepsiCo company had developed a potato plant variety FL 2027, which is a chipping potato variety with low external defects, high dry matter, and stable sugars, all of which make it highly suitable for manufacture of chips. PepsiCo was granted certificate of registration of this variety in the year 2016, thus conferring it an exclusionary right to market, sell, import and export or distribute the seed variety for a period of 6 years. However, in an application filed by a farmers' rights activist, the authority has revoked the company's registered plant variety in the year 2021. The grounds for the revocation are given in Section 34 of Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act. The following grounds are: grant of a registration certificate is based on incorrect information that is furnished by the applicant. The registration certificate was granted to an ineligible person when the breeder has not provided the registrar with required documents, and failure to provide an alternative denomination for variety registration. Failure of the breeder to provide the required seeds for compulsory license, failure to comply with the acts, rules, regulations and the directions issued by the authority. The grant of registration certificate is against the public interest. The High Court has rejected the appeal of the company on the basis that PepsiCo had sought the registration of FL 2027 variety as a new variant instead of an extant variant in 2012, despite furnishing the date of its commercialization in India to be December 2009. The High Court made clear that to be registered as a new variant, an additional requirement of novelty in addition to distinctiveness, uniformity and stability must be satisfied. This condition requires the propagated or harvested material must not have been sold in India earlier than 1 year before the date of filing the application of registration. FL 2027 could not fulfill the criteria of novelty and was only eligible for registration under extant variant and not new variant. The PepsiCo gave the first date of sale of the variety in its application as December 2009. However, it had already been commercialized in 2002 in Chile. Therefore, the court said the certificate of registration had been obtained based on incorrect information furnished by the applicant, which becomes a ground for revocation under Section 34A, the incorrect information furnished under the Act. The Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act is very significant for India as it is an agri-based economy with the agriculture sector having the highest workforce, nearly 152 million as of fiscal year 2021. Therefore, the multinational companies and the food processing companies and investors must prioritize the well-being of farmers and their rights by developing a comprehensive understanding of India's local laws, particularly the Act of 2001, and recognize safeguards and protections it provides to farmers. In 2019, question appeared on the topic we have discussed. The first statement says, according to Indian Patents Act, a biological process to create a seed can be patented in India, which is an incorrect statement. In India, there is no intellectual property appellate board. It is also incorrect. The third statement is correct because plant varieties are not eligible to be patented in India as discussed above. Hence, option C is the correct answer. The next article for our discussion is based on the news which appeared on Text and Context of the Hindu. The news article is on the North India's monsoon and several factors related to it. The topic comes under General Studies 1 and becomes part of important geophysical phenomena and the changes. This year's monsoon onset and distribution have been particularly unique and challenging. The delayed onset, patchy rainfall distribution and extreme weather events have raised questions about the factors influencing this monsoon. The reasons behind the above normal rainfall during the pre-monsoon season and erratic distribution of rainfall are discussed in the article. It is an also important topic because in mains PYQ 2015, we have seen question appeared on the similar lines. The question is, how far do you agree that the behavior of Indian monsoon has been changing due to humanizing landscape? Discuss. Let us first discuss the delayed onset of monsoon and the several factors related to it. The unforeseen interactions between typhoons and the cyclones delayed the monsoon season's onset. Cyclone Biparjoy lingered for an extended period, causing a delay in arrival of monsoon over Mumbai by 2 weeks. The unusual delay resulted in monsoon arriving simultaneously in Mumbai and Delhi. This is a phenomenon not witnessed in over half a century. As a consequence, the monsoon trough over northwest India exhibited an exaggerated curvature. A monsoon trough is a belt of low pressure extending to a large area. It is seen during the monsoon season, hence it is known as monsoon trough. It is a part of intertropical convergence zone where the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere winds meet. It runs across continents during the peak monsoon periods. Also, patchy rainfall distribution was observed. For example, excess rainfall was observed over the northern western Ghats and northwest India. Deficits extended from Uttar Pradesh to Odisha and further east to Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. Himachal Pradesh experienced extreme heat alongside heavy rainfall. Now let us discuss the reasons behind delayed onset, above-normal rainfall and patchy distribution. The first reason becomes the influence of the global warming. While the El Nino phenomena in the Pacific Ocean has garnered attention, the increase in wildfires emitting higher levels of CO2 has contributed to further warming. Now let us understand what is El Nino. El Nino refers to abnormal warming of surface waters in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, and it is known to suppress the monsoon rainfall in India. In contrast, the La Nina event involves abnormal cooling of sea surface waters in the same region. This tends to aid the rainfall over India. The two phases, El Nino and La Nina, along with the neutral phase in which sea surface temperature remains close to long-term averages, make up El Nino Southern Oscillation System. The equatorial region in the Pacific Ocean, located between Ecuador and Peru in South America and the islands of Philippines and Indonesia, serve as the playground for this complex system. Let us now discuss the El Nino during the normal conditions. The trade winds which blow from east to west at the lower latitudes push the relatively warm surface waters westward. As a result, Eastern Pacific near the South American coast experiences the upwelling of cooler waters from below. This process leads to accumulation of warm waters near Indonesia, known as Western Pacific Warm Pool, and cold waters near Ecuador and Peru. The warmer surface waters near Indonesia creates a low pressure area, triggering the rise of air, cloud formation, and heavy rainfall. These air movements contribute to monsoon systems development, bringing rainfall over India. Now let us discuss the deviation from the normal condition, that is the El Nino conditions. During the El Nino events, the trade winds weaken, hampering their ability to push warm waters towards the Indonesian coast. This leads to abnormal warming of Central and Eastern Pacific Ocean off the coast of Ecuador and Peru. The sea level difference between Indonesia and South American coast, along with weakened trade winds, causes some accumulated warm water to flow backwards towards South American coast. This further aids to warming in Eastern Pacific Ocean. This alteration in the atmospheric circulation loop reduces precipitation over Indonesia, and neighboring regions, thus negatively affecting the Indian monsoon as well. In contrast, during the La Nina condition, the opposite occurs where the trade winds become stronger, pushing more warm waters towards the Indonesian coast and resulting in colder than normal temperature in the eastern Pacific Ocean. The another factor is influence of a warm tropical Atlantic, which is also known as Atlantic Nino, on the monsoon rainfall. Every year from June to August there is a warming in the eastern equatorial Atlantic. Although Atlantic and the Indian Oceans are not directly connected in the tropics via the ocean, the Atlantic Nino is still able to affect the monsoon by producing atmospheric waves. These atmospheric waves propagate into Indian Ocean. The propagated atmospheric waves affect the air temperatures over the Indian Ocean and influence land-ocean thermal contrast as well as low-pressure systems. Therefore, the biggest rainfall deficits from the Atlantic Nino tend to occur over the Western Ghats. Another reason is the warming of Arabian Sea. The Southeast Arabian Sea surrounding the Kerala coast suffers from enhanced deep atmospheric convection, that is, vertical transfer of heat and moisture, resulting from unprecedented warming of the surface waters. Compared with 1980s, the warming of Southeast Arabian Sea has exceeded by more than 1 degree Celsius, thus surpassing 29 degrees Celsius in the 1980s to greater than 30 degrees Celsius in 2020s. The warming in the Arabian Sea is about 1.5 times that of the rest of the world's oceans. It has been responsible for recent extremes and subsequent landslips in Kerala since 2018. The warming induced enhanced thermodynamic instability of the atmosphere, which has led to organization of mesoscale convective clusters. These convective clusters are huge clusters of thunderstorms and showers, which produces torrential rainfall. It has led to huge consequences in the form of increased frequency of deep cumulonimbus clouds even during the monsoon, leading to very heavy to extreme rainfall and cloudburst type events. The last factor we will discuss is the Himalayas and the local weather patterns. The uneven terrain and the heterogeneous land use patterns contribute to this phenomenon. The upper air circulation can trigger clockwise and anti-clockwise wind patterns, especially when encountering mountain terrains like Himalayas. These wind patterns influence the surface circulation, leading to excess rainfall. Also, the warming trends over the Himalayas are not uniform, with some areas experiencing rapid local warming. The irregular weather patterns during monsoon interact with these local features, causing cloudburst, heavy rainfall, and heat waves based on wind patterns expanding or compressing. To summarize, the interplay of various factors such as delayed onset, forming of the Arabian Sea, Atlantic Ocean, the Himalayas influence, and the local weather patterns creates the surprises witnessed during the monsoon season. Therefore, improved forecasting capabilities with detailed spatial and temporal granularity are necessary to mitigate the element of surprise caused by these complex weather phenomena. In Prelims 2017, question appeared on the Indian monsoon. The question is, with reference to Indian Ocean dipole sometimes mentioned in news, while forecasting Indian monsoon, which of the following statements are correct? The first statement says IOD phenomenon is characterized by a difference in sea surface temperature between tropical Western Indian Ocean and tropical Eastern Pacific Ocean. Now this statement is incorrect. Why? As IOD is an atmospheric ocean coupled phenomena in the Indian Ocean, characterized by a difference in sea surface temperature of Eastern Indian Ocean, that is Bay of Bengal, and Western Indian Ocean, that is Arabian Sea. The second statement is an IOD phenomenon can influence El Nino's impact on the monsoon. The statement is correct, as negative IOD events are associated with La Nina and positive IOD events are associated with El Nino. Thus, option 2 becomes the correct answer. The last article for today's discussion is based on the news which appeared on page number 1 of the Hindu. The article relates to Directorate of Enforcement. This becomes part of General Studies paper 2, which comes under Government Policies and Interventions, and General Studies paper 3 relating to the topic money laundering. Let us first discuss about the news. In a recent development, the Supreme Court has asked Sanjay Kumar Mishra, who is the Director of Enforcement Directorate, to resign 4 months before his third extension. The Supreme Court has also upheld certain statutory amendments that allow for prolongation of the tenures of directors of Central Bureau of Investigation and ED in a gradual manner. In 2020-21, amendments were introduced to Central Vigilance Commission Act and Delhi Special Police Establishment Act and the fundamental rules that now permit them to receive 3 annual extensions. The CBI and ED prior to this development held fixed tenure of 2 years only. On the basis of this article, let us discuss certain facts about Directorate of Enforcement. The ED is a multidisciplinary organization mandated with investigation of economic crimes and violation of foreign exchange laws. The origin of this directorate goes back to 1956 when an enforcement unit was formed in Department of Economic Affairs for handling exchange control laws violations under Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1947. The ED was headed by Legal Service Officer as Director of Enforcement, who was assisted by officer drawn on deputation from Reserve Bank of India. However, in 1960, the administrative control of the Directorate was transferred to Department of Revenue from Department of Economic Affairs. Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1973 replaced the 1947 FERA Act, which was repealed. Presently, the Directorate is under the administrative control of Department of Revenue, which comes under Ministry of Finance. With the onset of process of economic liberalization, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act 1973, which was a regulatory law, was repealed, and in its place a new law, Foreign Exchange Management Act, which was enacted in 2000, was framed. Also, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002 was enacted in tune with the international money laundering regime, and the Enforcement Directorate was entrusted with its enforcement in 2005. Also, in 2018, with the increasing number of cases relating to economic offenders taking shelter in foreign nations, the government has passed the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018. The Enforcement Directorate is entrusted with its enforcement in the year 2018 itself. Now let us move to discuss statutory functions of ED. Its functions include enforcing acts such as the Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act 1974, Foreign Exchange Management Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. Let us first take the case of Prevention of Money Laundering Act of 2002. PMLA is a criminal law enacted to prevent money laundering and to provide for confiscation of property derived from or involved in money laundering and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Under PMLA, the ED carries out searches and seizures of properties, money, and documents deemed to be involved in money laundering. It has the power to arrest individuals if necessary. The ED can also directly carry out search and seizure operations without prior summons under Section 50 of PMLA. The agency has been given jurisdiction over individuals, legal entities, and public servants involved in offences related to money laundering. However, the ED cannot initiate action on its own and requires a complaint from another agency or police to begin an investigation. Coming to Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999. It is a civil law enacted to consolidate and amend the laws relating to facilitating external trade and payments to promote the orderly development and maintenance of foreign exchange market in India. The Enforcement Directorate has been given responsibility to conduct investigation into suspected contraventions of foreign exchange laws and regulation, to adjudicate and impose penalties on those adjudged to have contravened the law. The Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018 was enacted to determine economic offenders from evading the process of Indian law by remaining outside the jurisdiction of Indian courts. The Enforcement Directorate is mandated to attach the properties of fugitive economic offenders who have escaped from the India, warranting arrest, and provide for confiscation of their properties to central government. It is a sponsoring agency under Conservation of the Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act of 1974. The Directorate under this Act is empowered to sponsor cases of preventive detention with regard to contraventions of Foreign Exchange Management Act. Recently, the Enforcement Directorate has also faced criticisms for its functioning. There has been allegations of misuse of PMLA by the government and the agency itself. Also, concerns have been raised about inclusion of ordinary crimes under PMLA and attachment of assets belonging to innocent individuals. The transparency and clarity regarding selection of cases to investigate have also been questioned. For example, the Enforcement Case Information Report, an equivalent of FIR, is considered an internal document and not given to the accused. The initiation of an investigation by ED has consequences that have the potential of curtailing the liberty of an individual. Also, the efficiency and low conviction rates of ED under the PMLA has been a subject of controversy. Now let us discuss the amendments of 2020-21 that extended the tenure of CBI Director and Director of ED. The President in 2021 promulgated 2 ordinances that allowed Center to extend the tenures of Directors of Central Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement Directorate from 2 years to up to 5 years. The amendments made in Delhi Special Police Establishment Act was, it provided that period for which Director of CBI holds office in his initial appointment may, in public interest, on the recommendation of committee led by PM and leader of opposition and CGI as member, and for reasons to be accorded in writing, to be extended to 1 year at a time. It also provided that no such extension shall be granted after completion of a period of 5 years in total, including period mentioned in the initial appointment. Amendments in the Central Vigilance Commission Act of 2003 was made to extend the tenure of Enforcement Director in public interest on the recommendation of committee comprising of CVC Chief, Revenue and Home Secretaries, among others, and for the reasons to be recorded, be extended up to 1 year at a time. It also provided that no such extension shall be granted after the completion of a period of 5 years in total, including the period mentioned in the initial appointment. The amendments of 2020-21 faced criticisms on the basis that the government could exploit the possibility of service extensions as a means to manipulate CBI and ED directors into aligning with its interest. It was argued that this dynamic would exert pressure on directors, leading them to comply with government's wishes in order to secure further extensions. The amendments also contradicted the fundamental objective of safeguarding the central investigative agencies from the government. Lastly, we can see the measures to improve the functioning of ED. A consensus can be built between adjudicating authority and the ED officers to ensure compliance with the constitutional provisions of PMLA, making investigations more transparent. The ED's expanded powers should be accompanied by a commitment to resolve cases expeditiously, allowing for speedy trials and convictions. Also, regular scrutiny of the agency's operations and ongoing evaluation can lead to improvements in conviction rate. Any deficiencies can be addressed through suitable legislation, executive action, or revised orders from the apex court.